Wait for the point. Okay, now. Bam.
When you want me to, how's it? This is Joey Santore, and you're watching the Break It Down show.
Yeah.
And I wasn't instructed to say this.
We were talking off mic about the background of my of the show, and so I used to do this charity ride across the country with my buddy Scott. We would raise a bunch of money for veterans, and this goes into what we'll talk about today. But it was a chance to get out and see how beautiful our country was, the people, the land, all these things. This is interstate. We're not even trying hard here. And it's out the front windshield in New Mexico and the sky in New Mexico. And I know you know this, like when you go through during monsoon season, when you drop over that last mountain ridge past Tucson and you go out to the desert out there, it's just gorgeous out there. It's lush, it's green, it's alive. You can look at a desert and think it's dead, but it's not.
Well, it depends what time of year you're there. You know, if you're in the dry season, there's certainly long dry periods, but you know, that's the thing is like the rain is short-lived or can be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What? By the way, Dane, whenever you want to ask a question, ask one. When you pick a place you want to go visit, is there any method to your madness, or is it all instinct, or what is it?
It's normally plant species. Yeah, I mean, I pick where I'll become interested in a plant species or a certain biome that selects, naturally selects for certain traits in a plant, and then I'll pick that place. Like, the New Mexico area, the whole Chihuahua Desert has a lot of gypsum, and gypsum can cause new species of plants to evolve, and so I will pick areas looking for gypsum. I'll literally go on the satellite map and look for white areas that are kind of barren and don't have, a fucking Walmart next to it or any hideous development. I tend to get far away from the developments because they have negative impacts on everything that's not human. They even have negative impacts on humans a lot of the time. But and then I'll go there and look for plants. And so, it's really biome. I mean, when I started doing this, I was focusing mainly on really narrow groups or lineages of plants, and now I'm just trying to get the whole ecosystem. I want to see everything. The ecosystem's like a fucking beautiful living machine that runs smoothly if it's allowed to by people. But the problem, of course, is that we have such trouble with our anthropocentric civilization letting it run smoothly or setting aside places where it can run smoothly.
Dane?
Yeah, man, you're very well traveled, dude. I've been following you for a little while now, and it's really cool to just see the places you go, and a lot of this country that most people don't see. Can sit back on our phones and computers and watch you do that, and I think you're reaching out to a good audience, awakening them to some just beautiful places and opening their minds to the plants. It's just really cool to follow. Everywhere I go now, I'm looking at plants. I never was really big into them when I was younger. Our dad has a green thumb, and I've tried to follow in his footsteps, but the guy uses more Miracle Grow than freaking Monsanto. but yeah, man, it's been really interesting. You got a really good way with
I was in fucking, I mean, I could be anywhere and find cool stuff to look at now. I mean, when you wake up, I call it waking up to the living world because it's really what it is. And once you wake up to it, you start paying attention to stuff. I was at I can curse, right? It's okay. It's
yeah, all the fuck you want.
Yeah. All right, just making sure. Some people get really weird about. I'm in Texas where there's a lot of good things about the state. But one of the things that always drives me nuts, and it's endearing in its own way, but the level of politeness extends to, it's great in a lot of ways, but then it's just people are still really shocked by dropping an F-bomb, which is hard for me to not do sometimes. So I've gotten better at it. Anyway, I was in fucking Quartzsite, Arizona. I remember one of the coolest places I ended up finding a bunch of plants, and it was like literally the irrigation ditch next to a Carl's Jr. I had just stopped to take a leak, and there was all this cool, native desert plants. There was a cool buckwheat, the genus Eriogonum. There was a whole bunch of other cool senna, some other stuff growing in this irrigation ditch next to like a parking lot where people are just chowing down on their fucking, burger, whatever, giving themselves diabetes early onset. So, it was it was. I mean, I'll be anywhere. I mean, I'll be on like a set of train tracks, looking at what's popping up, growing there. The unintentional ecology. Oftentimes, it's a lot of invasive plants that didn't even exist in North America till they were brought over 100 years ago. I mean, my whole eye is on plants now. I mean, everything. It's just like constantly something I'm thinking about.
One of my favorite videos you got is when you're in Oakland under the overpass, just walking through the all the homeless and man.
Yeah, it was gnarly.
You can find beauty anywhere,
Well, I mean, just interesting things. I don't know if I'd call it beauty, but it's certainly interesting. That's what I get fascinated. I'm just fascinated. Yeah, I mean, because I know so much about all these plants. I mean, that one episode it was a hodgepodge of native plants that showed up, like the coast live oaks that get planted by the scrub jays, just stashing acorns and forgetting where they put all of them. And then a bunch of the Australian acacias was just escaped from people's yards. Mm-hmm. And turns out they do really well in the California, Northern California coastal climate. And so they were naturalizing. I mean, it's kind of cool to see what pops up. I've always been drawn to those places anyway, those little railroad corridors and places you basically have to trespass to get to. And the only people you're going to encounter when you're there are like winos or like graffiti writers or whoever. Yeah. So
I used to go to Afghanistan. I was a spy, and I would run around in these valleys. And I was in a place where they farmed a lot of pomegranates. And so we were trying to figure out why there were pomegranate trees all down the river. And then we figured out that they were pomegranates, like this natural human consumption gets down to the river, and it just populates that whole ecosystem with all of these,
They were pooping in the rivers.
Yeah, pomegranates, or their poop somehow gets down there. This wasn't a modern place. This is a very Stone Age place, right? So either way, that stuff goes downhill. I wanted to see if I can get him here. This is my buddy Dave. Dave runs the Irvine Nature Conservancy. You two are peas in a pod, man. Punk rock kids, the both of you. And Dave is all about nature. Dave, can you hear us right now? Dave, looks like Dave cannot hear us. Anyhow, Dave runs a gigantic conservancy down here in Southern California in Irvine. Multi-cities, multi-projects. They'll take on a hunk of river that someone wants to offset the damage of building a Carl's Jr., whatever it is. And so they'll hire Dave's organization to go out and put in the native species, and they run seed farms. I don't know if he can hear us. We're still trying to figure his comms out, but you guys will have a great conversation. It's always fascinating to talk.
He works in restoration. He's like restoration. I wish we had more of that in Texas.
Yeah, man, it's beautiful out there though. Out in West, how far out in West Texas are you? There's a lot of West Texas.
I'm in Alpine. I'm in a little town called Alpine that's got a university in it, and they used to have a good botany program. It's kind of non-existent now, but there's the native plants. Like the whole concept of a native plant is not present in most people's minds. It never occurs to them that these things do well because they're adapted here and they evolved here for millions of years. It's the whole concept of planting native. It's not about going back to some mythical point in time. It's about ecological function. Again, this idea of the ecosystem as a living machine is 100% accurate. It's got all these different moving parts, all these different species. You start bringing shit in from other continents. It's like, trying to get a piece to a 1989 Prelude to work in a fucking Buick. It's not going to work.
Yeah. If you go back all the way back in the most oldest text about North America, one of the guys is Cabeza de Vaca, and he walks basically naked.
Oh, I know about that guy. Yeah.
And so he
was pooping in rivers too. He was pooping in the Rio Grande back in 1760. He was out in your hood, the Rio Grande. I'm going to make a point to do that at some point. Actually, I'm just kidding. I would never.
Well, you took pomegranates first, though, right?
I mean, pomegranates, the reason you saw them in Afghanistan is probably, they do so well. It's probably because they're native there. Or the wild ancestor is. Every crop has been through human selection, right, in the last however many thousands of years. But, God, I would love to fucking go to Iran. I'd love to go to that whole area, Iran, Afghanistan. It's a little hot, it seems like, and I'm not talking temperature-wise, but I'd hate to be used as a pawn, as leverage, abducted by the Iranian government and used this leverage. But there's a lot of good botanists in Iran, actually, and there's a lot of fucking cool plants. It's a mountainous region. It's, similar climate probably, I would assume, to like northern Nevada, Wyoming. I mean, there seems like there's some really cool stuff there.
Right. Yeah, the heather in the hills, it would evolve with the seasons, and so you could look at a mountain and think it was dead, and then it's all rock everywhere. There's no roads, there's nothing modern, but they've also whacked down all their trees, and so there's no trees. Everything there is small and adapted to that very rocky environment. But then in those valleys, man, it's rich, it's lush down there.
Yeah,
and you can see complete differences in the terrain from whatever's leaching out of the mountain when it rains and snows, which happens a lot. And yeah, it's remarkable how, like, when you fly in over Egypt, over Alexandria, into, by the pyramids and everything, you know that the Nile is fertile, but then you see it and you realize how wide that band of fertility is. It's amazing.
Yeah, I would have. I mean, the Nile during the Pleistocene supposedly was. I mean, that whole region was supposed to be a lot different, And then I mean, everywhere humans go, extinction seems to follow sooner or later. Where even if it was, certain Native American groups or the Maori in New Zealand wiping out the Moas. I mean, and of course the Europeans. I mean, God, the amount of things. So I can only imagine in the cradle of civilization where our species got started, how many plants must have been growing there that are now extinct. I'd love to, God, I would love to know. I mean, if only there was a time machine.
Yeah. Dave, can you hear us now?
I can now, yeah.
Oh, Dave.
It's taken a couple of tries.
Yeah, Joey, meet Dave. Yeah, so Dave runs the Irvine Nature Conservancy. How big is your space that you guys conserve and work with the other various municipalities in the county?
We manage about 30,000 acres in Central Orange County in partnership with county and several cities. Mostly coastal sage scrub, got a lot of riparian, got chaparral, a bunch of different ecosystems that are functioning within that. So
there was a spot I used to love going in Orange County called Coal Canyon. It was Coal Canyon and Sierra Peak, and it was
I know it is.
Yeah, near Corona. There's a Tecate cypress grove there. I mean, there's a bunch of cool plants there. So it's a weird soil type.
We've been doing habitat restoration for Tecate cypress up above Coal Canyon. Coal Canyon is an ecological reserve for the state Fish and Wildlife group, and then we manage. There's a county area behind us or behind that we manage in partnership with the county, and then the Tecate bleed into the Cleveland National Forest as well.
Oh, cool. What were you guys doing? Were you growing like plugs of Tecate cypress, or just trying to collect seed, or what?
Yeah, so the population that was in that area is like the northernmost population in the world, and it got hit by a fire, and like two frequent fires, and it wiped out like half of the grove. And so we were working with the Rancho Santa Ana Botanical Gardens, and they were growing seedlings for us, and then we were taking them out there and restoring the grove as much as we can.
Oh,
so
great.
What's interesting is there was in Orange County, there's a really fancy nursery, garden shop called Rogers Gardens, and they contract grew Tecate cypress this year to sell as living Christmas trees in Orange County. Yeah, I think they grew like 200 of them in order to try to get people to start, buying them and bringing them home and stashing them at their house, keeping them alive.
Yeah, they smell great, man. They smell really cool. Good. I was at that population, I think, in 2012, or maybe it was 2013, and there was a bunch of recruitment. There were a bunch of little seedlings, but I don't know if you guys had a fire again after 2012, it would have wiped out. That's the thing. They get hit by fire before they get a chance to put out new cones.
Yeah, it takes so long for their cones to mature. And as the human population has increased, so has the fire frequency. So we haven't had a fire up in that area, I think, since 2008. But it was pretty devastating, the one that did come through. It wiped out a lot. Yeah. So, some of them had not reached maturity yet. So they're kind of a lost cause at that point. Yeah. So, but there's some natural recruitment going on.
Yeah, that was one of my favorite species. Yeah, I've seen the southernmost grove too, way down there by Baja, where it's, you get these cypress growing with these giant cacti.
Yeah. They're cool. You know, when it's a thick grove, it's just like this blanket of cypress trees all over. It's really pretty neat to see.
There's
So,
an endemic butterfly that it uses that as a host plant too, which I didn't know about. Thorn's hair streak. It was cool. I mean, yeah,
okay.
it's the cool thing about all these fucking plants is, the more you learn that there's all these connections, just like the parts of a machine to other parts of this ecosystem
Yeah.
that also have connections to other shit. And that's
They're
why.
interdependent on each other. They require each other to be there for things to function.
Right, but of course, humans have been dismantling it for the however last 150 years. It's like, I don't need this. Just fucking throw this piece out, and suddenly the car won't start.
Yeah, that happens all the time. So, yeah. In fact, in Orange County, we have one of the most diverse butterfly populations in the United States. And so we actually do specific habitat restoration work focused on, butterfly host plants, trying to get species to increase the population and diversify the areas where they're being found. So
yeah, where I live in South Texas, there's a lot of butterfly diversity too. I never thought I'd be a booster for butterflies. It seems just because the cultural associations, like I fucking hate roses. I fucking hate roses because just that, every rose you see wouldn't exist in nature. It's a horticultural atrocity. It's been bred in a greenhouse. This stupid, the fucking connections to Hallmark holidays and stuff. So they've kind of been ruined for me culturally. But then when you see like actual wild rose species that haven't been tampered with by humans at all, that are just pure products of their ecology and their environment, then they're pretty cool. But the thing with butterflies, I mean, yeah, they're well, first off, there's 10 times more moths, but they're just the connection between host plants is fucking cool. And then, I mean, they feed so much, like so many other things eat them,
Yeah, it's all part of, like you said, it's like one of the gears in the machine, and without it, you run into problems.
That machine analogy is really, I mean, it really is. It's really hits the spot because to people that don't understand it. First off, a lot of people my goal is kind of to get people that are more machine oriented and more into that kind of shit into this stuff. But it really explains the analogy is great because it's like, oh, okay, I understand that. Like I understand this piece is important for this and it's connected to this. And it, why should you give a shit about this thing if you can't? I mean, that's the thing. That's how like most of us have been, had our minds fucked up just by the society we grow up in. We're only taught to appreciate plants if you put it in your ass and it's medicinal or psychoactive or something, or if if it's edible, if you could put it in your mouth and not die. What does edible mean? It doesn't mean it tastes good. It just means you're not going to die if you eat it. It's kind of fucking pointless. And then 3, if it's pretty or not. Well, what does that mean? It's pretty. Like what the fuck? We don't have the same taste in pretty. A lot of things that most people find pretty, I probably find tacky and fucking garish and revolting. So it doesn't mean anything. But when you talk about function, there's data and there's science behind that, and you can't fuck with that. That's there. It's a function. It performs a function in an ecosystem. It's why invasive species are a problem. They perform a function 5,000 miles away in Asia or South Africa or Australia, but they don't have a function here. And again, it's that, mixing pieces from a Prelude to a fucking Chevy Caprice or whatever,
Yeah. It's funny is, we spend easy 6 figures a year on invasive species removal, whether it's plants, mostly plants, but the invasive beetles are now showing up. Every other year we're getting a new beetle coming in, killing off trees. And like we got now the gold spotted oak borer that has been ravaging the oak woodlands, which is a problem. But it also then increases the fire frequency because you have these invasive plants that are coming in that, they grow and then they dry and then they can burn every single year, like mustard and stuff like that. Or you're killing off the oak trees and they can burn then because of the beetles. So it's invasive species is a big problem. And a lot of people
where'd the oak beetle come from?
It actually came from Arizona. So
really?
We believe it was brought in through firewood being moved around. So because
it's native to Arizona?
It's native to Arizona, but it has natural predators that keep it in check. And so you move it into another area and those predators aren't there to take care of what needs to happen. So they've just been kind of exploding, and they create, you get trees that are amplifier trees, and they all of a sudden you've got huge areas that are being infested. I think San Diego County lost not like 70% or something like that of their own woodlands.
I'm gonna
Due
look
to the
that up.
gold spotted oak borer.
What's the name of that beetle?
It's the gold spotted oak borer.
Gold spot. Because most of the time when you get invasive species, they come from other continents because those have been separated so long. I mean, you figure that the ecosystem of Arizona is directly adjacent to California. At some point
Yeah.
in the Pleistocene or however recently, with how distributions shift, they'll shift across a continent and you'll get a route, but they can't cross oceans, generally speaking, in almost all cases, because most bird migratory patterns are north to south, not east to west, not across the Atlantic or Pacific. So, yeah, I'm curious about that. I wonder how. I don't know. You rarely hear of intercontinental.
The deserts, I think we're keeping it kind of stuck in their areas, but we do have Asian, Kirishita shot-hole borers and several other shot-hole borers that are Asian that have shown up, mostly through importation of things into the United States.
Yeah, that's brutal. Those are the worst. I just did a podcast today with this guy who's working on transgenic American chestnuts. All the American chestnuts were basically wiped out. They're functionally extinct due to an Asian fungus, a fungus that evolved in Asia and co-evolved with the Asian chestnuts for 10 million years, but didn't evolve here. And so that's why it proved so fatal. And they were talking about he was just talking about the basically the GMO, a slight tweak they had to do to the genome, inserting a section of a wheat gene that breaks down oxalic acid and renders the fungus basically not harmless, but not deadly.
Yeah. Again, but every time you do something like that, you're messing with something,
I mean, you're going to be messing with it anyway.
Pendulum swing,
Yeah, you're going to be messing with it. I mean, restoring a piece of an ecosystem is a pretty worthwhile thing to shoot for. You're messing with it. We're messing with it anyway by being here. It's like 8 billion people. You're going to be messing with something no matter what. You might as well try to do it in a constructive way. But yeah, chestnuts. I mean, 1 out of every 4 trees on the east in the distribution, in the old distribution where it used to grow, 1 out of every 4 trees was a chestnut. Now they're gone.
Yeah,
I mean, that's like a huge piece of the Jenga tower that's been removed.
Yeah.
I just finished reading a book called Moth and the Iron Lung or something like that, and it was about in the 1800s they were trying to improve silk, and so legitimate scientists have a bunch of what are called gypsy moths, and a little, it's just like these things are crazy how these things go. A little breeze comes and blows his samples out of his kitchen window and into the ground, and then they just go wild. They just bust out everywhere, and it causes such a problem. They're so devastating to this new environment. They're just I think it's oak trees. They were just hammering oak trees that they started fighting them with what they had available back in the 1800s, which was cyanide and arsenic. And they're like, you know what? If we mix that with oil, it'll stick on every agricultural product. And so to fight these things, they introduced all of this poison in. And by the way, at the same time, polio is expanding. So like, it's the polio. I love like these examples, like from The Jerk, we're like, he hates these cans. They kept doing that every single time that they came up with a solution. It was totally wrong. And the book is fascinating, but it goes to what you guys are talking about, where if you add this species or take something out, it screws the entire system up.
Was that the brown apple moth, right?
Yeah, I remember. Yeah, that was something they were spraying. They were spraying for fruit orchards. I don't know if they're still. I'm sure they're probably still doing it, but
they were doing it over our neighborhoods at one point. I'm in Santa Cruz, and I remember that they were everyone was real upset about that, but they're still around.
Yeah, there's no getting rid of it.
No.
Yeah,
you're not.
In the 80s and 90s, we were fighting our weed growers, and the state's like, we know what we're going to do, and I forget. Promethean, I think is what it was. They down in Mexico, they don't care about that crap. They're just going to spray that stuff everywhere. But the citizens of California are like, look, we're not all that mad about pot growers anyhow. You're for sure not going to dump a bunch of poison on the top of all of us, even though we had done malathion to knock down the mosquitoes. And so you're always battling this whole thing. By the way, from that moth book, down line from all of the problems that were created, DDT comes out of that whole problem set. It's a sub thing from that moment, Yeah,
that was DDT was a bad one. That was an ugly period.
Didn't they just find a bunch of barrels off the Catalina Islands full of DDT?
Yeah, It's been a problem for a long time in Southern California because they dumped barrels and barrels, hundreds of barrels in the channel between LA and Catalina.
That's so
And that's why
funny.
the Bald Eagle had so many issues out on Catalina Island, and there had to be this whole recovery program that went on, which has been successful. We've actually, in Orange County, we've had bald eagles nest here now over the last 6 or 7 years for the first time since the early 1900s. But it was the ones that were re-released out to Catalina based on the DDT problem.
Yeah, we'll just dump this in the creek. Yeah, what could go wrong? There's nothing. No, just
These things
think about it again.
Yeah.
Go down to the ocean. It's just like forgetting about it.
Nobody will see it.
I had a guy on my show, and I've had him on several times, and he focuses on the ocean. And so there's an international rule. Maybe you guys know about this. There's an international rule that like anything before 1972, it just doesn't count. And what he's fighting is like in World War II, anytime a ship's out at sea, they can just dump whatever munitions off the edge of the boat they want, airplane, whatever. Nobody cared. And so now there's these entire dead spots in the ocean where legally there's nothing there. There is no bomb. But the fish that were there are born with cancer. Like that's how they've adapted to the environment, by just having cancer on board as they're created, and they're all mutated. And there's all these other problems where we put munitions into the dirt on land, like in Alabama at Fort Rucker, where they're like, we don't even know where all the ranges were. It's been too many years. There's too many trees. There's too many things that aren't around anymore. And so if you are assigned to Fort Rucker, Alabama, you're automatically given like, hey, we can't say that we didn't poison you when you were there. So it's in your like disability paperwork, right? And we still, like Joe, you know this, we cannot learn this lesson. We cannot stop dumping DDT into our water, airplanes, and we just can't stop doing it.
PFAS, the PFAS, yeah, that's the one now. I'm sure there's more that will come out. Deregulation though, right? Yes, as long as the companies are happy, it's all that matters. As long as we can make all those companies happy and, their lobbying pays off, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Stop the dollar.
That poison that they were dumping on all those, to stop the moths, they were saying like, hey, arsenic in these small amounts, mercury, it's not a problem. We got it all good. It's like that. It sounds patently ridiculous now, but then I always wonder, and I want to hear what you and Dave think. What are we doing now that's akin to that? Like, okay, we all know that you shouldn't have lead was one of the ingredients. So lead, arsenic, and mercury were the things they were using to solve a health problem. It's insane. But what are those things now that we do that we shouldn't be doing?
I mean, I'm not a chemist. I don't know. I'm sure I'm sure the list is pretty long though, of stuff that's it'll come out in the wash. I mean, look at PFAs, look at how long that those were just part of everything, flame retardants, Teflon cookware, anything. And now it's like, oh yeah, by the way, they're linked to cancer. Sorry.
Yeah.
And they're everywhere. And we knew that in the 70s, there was I think it was a Netflix movie that came out on it. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure there's so much. Look how it's not normal. I mean, I'm sure cancer is normal, but the fucking rates at which people get it now, it's insane. We're all going to get cancer. Every single one of us, I'm sure, will at some point. That's just, there's no way. Not to be too negative. I'm just saying, let's be honest, right? But it's coming. There's so much shit that's just pumped into everything. I mean, like putting Roundup. And I'm not against Roundup, but putting it on food is fucking insane. That's insanity. That's the mark of a sociopathic civilization.
Well, and look at the plastics. The plastics alone, those are, as everyone knows, are a problem because it's you have big ocean islands of plastics. You have plastics in your food. You have all kinds of stuff.
Not to mention all the shit that's in plastics too. It came out, black. Anything black plastic like takeout containers is probably giving you cancer. That came out like a month or two ago.
Yeah,
where I live, everything is so reactionary. It's like the whole fucking state here is just like, fuck yeah, we're gonna use plastic. We're gonna fucking trigger the libs. And I don't care what position someone's on, but just the whole idea of just like getting back at the other side, whatever, this reactionary. It's so shit for brains. It's like, wait, this shouldn't be a political thing. This is like preventing people from getting cancer, man. This shouldn't be like a left or right thing. This is caring about the future of your kids not getting cancer when they're older shouldn't be a left or right thing. Like, you're not, really, like, come on. Like, people are just so easily duped by pundits and by social media talking points. It's
and it's the plastic companies. A lot of people work there. A lot of people's livelihoods are dependent on it. So
right, and so that's why it's rather than shift industry or make these small changes, we just we fight to stand still and not do anything. Like the same. I don't know. I mean, fuck. I don't know. I mean, the same thing with like the electric cars. Like I'm all for just not being trapped in a car every day to begin with. I'd rather live in a walkable city, only take cars when I need to move a fucking couch or have an excessive load of groceries or something, but the thing about the cars, like electric cars are just better. Yeah, the lithium sucks, but there's less moving parts. You don't have to get oil changes. And the sheer fact, I mean, I got a friend who's a mechanic. He was like a fucking right-wing guy. And he was like, yeah, combustion engines they're just not that efficient. You lose a lot of energy and heat. Electric cars are just more efficient pound for pound. You get more bang for your buck in terms of energy put in and whatnot. And not, all the kickback against electric cars now. It's so unthinking. It's just divisiveness.
You just said you want to live in a walkable city. Your ass lives way out in Alpine, Texas. I know where Alpine, Texas is. And it's
walkable. I can walk to the grocery store from here, man.
Fair enough. But if you have to leave town, man, you'll die. You're in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, I'm not against cars. I just don't want to be fucking trapped in one every day. Have you ever been to the I-35 corridor in Texas? It's a fucking shit.
Oh my gosh.
No offense. The ugliest area of the country I've ever fucking been to is between Austin and San Antonio. It's just like billboards for ambulance chasers, car dealerships, fucking 16-lane roads, frontage roads that are basically an extension of the freeway. It's a shithole. It's a fucking ugly, miserable ass place. There's no trees except in the median parking strips of these giant parking lots, half of which are never used. I've never seen a full parking lot in any of these retail slum shitholes. It's a fucking miserable place to live, versus like when you go to like a college town or something, it's like old school or old cities, old cities where there's walkable streets, but they're not easy to drive in. You can't find parking, but they're much more, you can fucking walk. And like, I just don't want to be trapped in a car. It's miserable. And it's horrible for your fucking health too. You get metabolic diseases, ass cancer, diabetes. I mean, we didn't evolve for 2 million years to be trapped sitting like this for 3 hours a day. It's fucking, what a miserable fucking life. And Americans have no idea how bad they're getting fucked because this is just what we're given. We don't have any options. They don't make cities like 1910 fucking Norman Rockwell Main Street anymore. They don't make them like that because our whole infrastructure is built around cars and shopping and all this dumb shit. We don't have a national culture anymore. I hate to say it. We really don't. You leave the country, you go to other places. I mean, it's not like this, man. I mean, I'm just talking shit. I'm not proposing any solutions. I'm sure there are, but people just, people get so defensive about this, but it's like, man, I'm right. I'm fucking right. That's what we have. That's what America is now. It's a retail slum, and that shit will continue growing until it's, there's no money to be made in it anymore. Like we're going to turn the whole country into a fucking parking lot. So
I'm going to pull you in a more positive direction.
We could say we're positive. I like being positive about negative things. It's about being lighthearted about negative things.
Way out by where you live, Big Bend Park, the state park and the federal park are amazing. People should get out there and see these things, and you cannot take it all in at the same time. The geography, the geology, it's all great. Are you familiar with the farm to market F1 or FN70? That route, that is gorgeous. It goes along it's just north of where. Yeah, it's a beautiful drive, and I loved it. Whenever I have a chance to get out there, I get out of my truck. Yeah. And there's nothing out there. There's nothing. You just get off the road and all of a sudden you are fully in nature.
Yeah. Everything's beautiful in West Texas. That's one of the reasons I live out here. I live an hour from the nearest Walmart. Is it inconvenience? Yeah. But what's the benefit is, I can see mountains. Where the town I live in, I can walk anywhere if I need to and not have to worry about getting mowed down by like a 17-year-old kid in a truck that I can't even see over the hood, Granted, there are those around, but people are generally pretty respectful and cool. You know, they respect each other. I like that. But I mean, everything is gorgeous out here, and the only problem is, yeah, there's just not a lot of public land. It's a lot of private land, which, you know, where you guys are, public land is everywhere. It's amazing. You could just go out, look at stuff. Hey, we're gonna stay tonight. Let's go stay on that mountain. Let's go stay in that valley. You know, it looks good. There's a road out there. I could see it's 10 miles away. It's probably a nice place to camp. So yeah, but geologically, I mean, it's, you know, all of Texas is limestone. It was all under a shallow sea, the Western Interior Seaway, which is back in the Cretaceous when the dinosaurs were still kicking. And then now, you know, you had all these Miocene, Oligocene volcanic eruptions roughly 30 million years ago. And so there's this really stark change up from the volcanics to the limestone, and you get different plant communities on each. So geologically and floristically, it's a great place for me.
I think I would be there to go see some gray banded king snakes.
Oh yeah,
They're one of my favorites.
I don't know if I've seen that. I don't know if I've seen that species, but
they're really pretty.
Really, yeah. There's so much. Yeah, there's so much good stuff. There's gray foxes in town. They've been really abundant the last few months. So you're not supposed to feed them, but I figured, what the fuck? They're in town anyway. They're going to be eating garbage. You know, if one of them hits Sonic Burger and gets some of those curly fries, that's going to be worse for it than any kibble I would give it. You know, so
yeah.
But the gray foxes has been really cool to see.
How's your tarantula doing?
Oh, that was in South Texas. That was at the place I was staying at in South Texas. I was up here teaching school the last 3 months. I don't know. She disappeared. Haven't seen her, and I've seen no evidence of her, you know, coming into or leaving her hole. So maybe she's still down there. I don't know.
Because they hibernate, right, for the winter, or no?
Yeah, I don't think she was going to find a mate in my front yard. I don't know what happened. I hope she's still alive. I guess they can live for a long time, like a decade or two, I think. Yeah.
You seem to run into a lot of animals in your journeys. It's almost like they come to you. I mean, you do spend a lot of time outside, but it just seems like almost every video you're running into something. Yeah,
I'm just out there. I mean, you know, I think
it's because you're paying attention.
Well, yeah, I think it's really easy to drive by landscapes, especially in a desert, and if you've never spent time in them, you don't know what to look for. It's really easy to look over them and just ignore it. But there's a ton of stuff there. It's just really about having a context for it. And so that's what I kind of hope to get other people to see, is that once you get a context for it, these places aren't boring anymore. You realize, oh, there's a lot of stuff going on. It's really worth taking a look at, you know? It's like an analogy would be like looking at like an abstract painting from 20 feet away, and it just looks like a gray blur, you know, like some weird shit. And then you get up close and you realize it's not just a gray blur. It's actually, you know, a bunch of little photos stitched together, each one as interesting as the next, that, you know, when you're far back, you can't see it. And it just looks like the closer you look, the more interesting stuff you see. And now, you know, with applications like iNaturalist, you could take photos of all this stuff and learn more about it. And AI is pretty good at telling you what you're looking at.
Yeah, it's kind of scary.
Yeah. Dave, do you guys use any kind of that, like the AI group analysis of like when they see plants and it goes into your database? Do you guys use any of that to grab data for what you guys are trying to plan?
Yeah, we use iNaturalist for sure, and then we also we have a whole bunch of wildlife camera traps, like 50 of them in this array throughout the 30,000 acres, and we process those images using AI as well. We had to teach it what we were wanting it to look for and that kind of stuff. But yeah, we contribute when we're doing a lot of the work that we're doing. We're contributing to those larger, universal databases that everybody's feeding into. So, because you need to know. I mean, looking at it from that scale of the big picture is really important. So, because you may be seeing movements of species, where you're like, oh, we're losing them, but they're actually just migrating their whole range, based on the climate change issues and things like that. So the bigger picture is important to participate in. So we do.
It's wild. AI is just one of those things where it's like it could be so great, and there's going to be good stuff that comes out of it. It's like, it's like having a computer in your pocket, which is what a smartphone is. But it's gonna be used for. There's gonna be a dark side too.
Yeah.
Like the most innocuous of which is going to be selling you dumb shit you don't want. And then there's going to be who knows in terms of government, what's going to come of it. So
I saw Terminator.
Right. Yeah.
We love walking into that Terminator trap. We were just desperate to do it.
Skynet's online. Skynet just became conscious.
Yes.
Yeah. When you and I'm always curious with Dave about this too, the difference between preservation and conservation, like in the different ways to look at land and how we use it or decide to not use it. What are your thoughts? Like, do you have a certain spot where you think, like out here in California, we're trying to rewild things. No grizzly bears, please, but rewild things up to a certain point.
Why not?
But hey, Dave, I'm all in a grizzly bears. I'm just saying. But you do have to get people to buy in on. We're going to have grizzly bears out here, and then like you guys shut down a portion of the nature that's available to us. Like it needs a break, right? And you guys are great about helping us manage that. So I guess what are your guys' thoughts on preservation, conservation, access? Because you also take a speed rail and go drive up mountains out in the desert too, and have at it and destroy whatever you want because it's fun.
I mean, for us, conservation and preservation, we're such urban edge and that urban wildland interface that you have this constant pressure of going on. And then when you do the preservation of things, you need to do it in scalable measurements where you're not just creating a bunch of islands that are really unsuccessful. They have to be connected. And I think that's really key to the success of a lot of preservation and or conservation efforts, and then for a lot of us here, we're actually rebuilding ecosystems. So, we do habitat restoration work at 100 acres at a pop. And, we have a native plant farm where we're growing seeds, including, the main structures of those ecosystems, but we also rare and endangered plants. We're farming those so that we can put them in the seed mixes, and because it's about ecosystem functionality and the health of that ecosystem and able to be resilient against the stressors, including, public humans are a stressor on nature. They are. You're coming out there, it's causing stress, whether you're interfering with their foraging habits or their mating habits, or, forcing them to be active at night when they should be during the day, all that kind of stuff. But we have that under a magnifying glass in Southern California, simply because we're one of the largest urban populations in the world. So there's all kinds of nuances with all of it. So
I don't really understand the difference between preservation and conservation, because I don't really work in that field. I mean, I would assume as preservation is trying to protect habitat that hasn't been destroyed, and is conservation a way of more like restoration minded, or what?
Yeah, that's kind of how we approach it. Because when you're talking about preservation, it's really trying to convince either, private entities or whatever to make sure their land stays in its natural state and gets, included in a larger system of preserves and things like that. And that, it comes from, it's been done in many ways, nonprofits doing it, or even, the state and federal agencies forcing mitigation measures when you're impacting habitats or things like that. So there's a lot of ways that it comes about. And for us, the conservation thing is taking degraded habitat, trying to restore it back to where it is, and trying to get those other species that are included in, if you preserve a really healthy habitat, there's a lot more in there than what people realize. Especially we're a biodiversity hotspot, so there's so much, and everything's tiny, but it's there, and so for us, when we're doing our kind of the restoration work, it's about trying to conserve even those other species that we may not realize is there. And we come across that a lot. Like, we'll go in and remove invasive species in preparation for plantings, and all of a sudden out of the seed bank, you'll get we got small flower morning glory popped up on this one ridgeline that had been grazed so heavily for 100 years, and it was just in the seed bank. And it turns out it was the largest population recorded on the West Coast. So it was, just those types of interesting things that when you're trying to push that conservation kind of work, you got to think about bigger things than just like, okay, there's a mountain and let's save it. So, a little more detailed.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I mean, for where I live, I wish there were just more people interested in it. I mean, where I stay in South Texas, there's so little interest for how many million. It's like 1.5 million people live in the area, and there's the amount of people that know about it and have interest is so infinitesimally small. And I think not knowing it's there is a big part of it. I mean, in California, you guys, that basically you're where the native plant movement started, and one of the best native plant movements and senses of native plant awareness in the whole country. You go to places in Mexico, there's not, I mean, except unless you're talking about the indigenous communities, in the popular culture, nobody gives a shit. Like I got friends in Mexico who are they're like, God, it's so cool to see someone who cares and is excited about this stuff. So many people aren't, at least outside of native communities that were never separated. Go like the hills of Oaxaca, the mountains of Oaxaca, you're going to find a lot of reverence and awareness of these things. They may not know scientific names, but they're into them and they respect them. But you go to a lot of the cities and just people don't give a fuck. So I think that's a big part of it, is just trying to get people aware of it and also show them that it's cool. And it's not just cool because it's medicinal or whatever that means, or psychoactive or edible. Those are the three most boring things that you could show me about a plant. And I get it. If you don't know anything else, you don't know what to look for. You've never been turned on to what else is cool about them. But, I just think that those are like the lowest common denominator things. Yeah. But you get people you get people interested in why these things are cool and why it's fun to go out and look at them and observe them and et cetera. That's where you really hit the nail on the head and you've got some hope.
One of the things that Dave's organization does too, he was talking about this last night, is they try to build those people. They work with UC Irvine, which does research. They're working with the lower schools and just trying to create programs. They're really great at community engagement. But gosh, Dave, I mean, how much of that work is your guys' work trying to seedlings of people who care about these things and will go on to PhD careers, or like your work, what you do? You guys have a lot of people that love this stuff. How do you make more?
Well, we over the last, I've been here working at this organization for 18 years, and we made a conscious effort. Like so you have people connected, but they can connect in many different ways, and a lot of them are recreationalists, right? And they're connecting through hiking or bird watching or mountain biking or whatever it is. But we really made a conscious effort to push kind of a stewardship or kind of a give back sense with the community. And we have, working across the county, we have about 2,000 volunteers that are highly trained in a lot of this stuff, and they're, uniformed. And so people look up to them and as, someone that's a respected person. And then they offer these activities, we're doing 300 a quarter that, where these volunteers are then taking the community out as volunteers in order to get them to participate in these things. And in Central Orange County, it's worked really well. We have a website called Let's Go Outside, which is kind of generic, and we allow other nonprofits and stuff to put stuff in there. But we've got 61,000 visitor accounts in there where people are coming out on a regular basis, and we're getting tens of thousands of hours of community volunteerism and for like pulling weeds and planting plants and monitoring raptor nests, all that kind of stuff. And about 20 years ago in Orange County, there was the environmental activist groups, and they were the ones fighting for that preservation stuff. But then, what's preserved? Like what then? And for us, it was about engaging. We got 3.5 million people in Orange County, and in this small space, and we're like, we need to engage some of those people and create a stewardship, volunteer that their sole purpose is to get more people interested in this stuff and involved in this stuff. And so we've been really successful at that. But it's still, it's a drop in the bucket compared to the population. And A lot of people don't even see nature when it's standing right in front of them. I was at a gas station the other day and I watched a Cooper's hawk come in and annihilate this pigeon right in front of all these people, and I'm the only one that saw it. I'm just like,
Yeah.
that was like super cool. Like, how do you not see that? And nope, they didn't even look up off their phones. So
I
some days it's
think you
frustrating.
gotta. I think it's gotta be forced in some way. I think you should kidnap people, put them in a bus, put them a bag over the head, take them to Carrizo Plain during a massive bloom. Excuse
There
my
you
voice.
go.
Take them to Carrizo Plain during a massive bloom. Give them half a tab of acid, maybe a full tab, and just fucking leave them there on a hillside for 12 hours. Tell them you'll come back, a little cooler full of water, maybe some fizzy drinks. No, but seriously, I don't know. I mean, I think you need the problem with this and why so many people have been turned off I think it's because the delivery's been so vanilla, and that's important for some people. Some people need a nice watered down, safe and soft approach, like I saw growing up at times. But I think a lot of other people need really to. Yeah, I'm going for the people who are malcontents. I'm going for, because that's how I got into it. I was so fucking revolted by so many things I saw in modern American consumer society. I was like, God, this is just fucking, it was like all this shit George Carlin was always ranting about in his old bits. I'm like, when I found that guy when I was like 19, I was like, this guy's saying everything I've ever thought, but I didn't have an answer to it. I was just negative. And then when I found all this other shit and learned about the geologic time scale and evolution, I was like, this is the fucking answer to it. This is beautiful and amazing. But at the same time, I still had this negative slant. And I think those things work together really well. I think it's a yin and yang. I think like being repulsed at everything around you goes really well with when you're out there being in love with everything around you. And that's how I feel when I'm out in those places, but again, it wouldn't mean as much unless I wasn't so revolted in the first place. I'm revolted all the time still by things I see, shit I hear people say, ways I see people behaving. I mean, I'm very, the nausea runs deep. And so that's why it makes it so fucking precious and valuable learning about those places and seeing them, so it's not going to be like that for everybody. I'm sure some people want the vanilla watered down shit, and that's good. I get people commenting on the channel like, why do you have to curse? Because it's just the way I talk. I worked for the fucking railroad 15 years. I don't know what to tell you. There's other channels for you. There's not a lot of channels that do what I do. So I think both are important.
What's really interesting? For 13 years prior to working here, I worked for the Department of Education, and I ran the environmental science programs for them. And there's a whole lot of research on the therapeutic aspects of nature, and I've seen it. Like we were a large program. We were doing 130,000 kids a year. We were taking them out in nature. We were doing like week-long science camps with them. And you get the kids that have ADHD and they can't sit still in the classroom, and you take them out here and they're the best students because they're stimulated. All this stuff's there for them to start bringing in. Much like you said, we weren't designed to be sitting in a car like this. We probably weren't designed to be put in a classroom behind a desk either. We were designed to learn from what's happening around us and really, really absorb that into who we are as people. But I think we've removed ourselves from a lot of that. And so a lot of people just don't get that experience, and it doesn't resonate with them. And a big
problem with school though too is that you're taught to just memorize stuff, not understand it. And you can forget all of it the minute the test is over, and that's fucked too. That's like when I went to college for 2 years for sociology, which was whack as hell. I had no interest in it, and it's kind of like a fake science. No offense to anyone who's actively studying. Well, whatever. But then, and I left, and then I traveled around, and then after a couple of years, I wanted to learn about geology and biology and weather systems. And then when I wanted to learn about it, I'd wanted to learn about it because I had been out there and seen it. I had been out there like dirt under my fingernails, cuts and scrapes, chilly nights spent sleeping in the cold. And I wanted to know, and then that made it more pressing. You can't get someone to just learn about something out of a book, field experience is everything. You got to
Yeah.
get out there
Yeah.
and see it. You don't learn anything by just reading out of a book. You got to, it helps to have, you got to have that book out there while you're out there with you. But, you know, it's got to be hands on.
Yeah, I
Absolutely.
agree.
Dane,
Yeah.
jump in, Dane.
I was gonna say I don't know if they're taking kids on field trips anymore. When I was young, it was like, at least where I live here in Central California, I mean, field trips were once a week. They take us to the ocean, they take us to the mountains, we look at banana slugs, whatever. But that was crammed down our throats, and I really grew to appreciate it. And now I'm obsessed with the outdoors, and I mean, I can't get enough of it. And I don't know if they're doing that anymore. They bringing these kids outside.
It depends. I think it depends what state. I think Californians are pretty lucky. You know, in Texas, not so much.
Right.
Yeah, we have quite a few programs in Orange County, although they're cost prohibitive. I mean, just busing alone, like to take it, if you're taking a class of fifth graders out, it's like $1,100 for a bus, you know.
Jesus
and
Christ.
yeah, it's like, it's nuts. And then, you know, like we're working with this group called the Delhi Center in Santa Ana, in, you know, in downtown. And you know, we just had the conversation the other day. It's like, well, we have these dates scheduled for them to go out in these areas, and you know, they're doing research with, you know, their teenage kids doing research with the researchers from UCI. We put a native plant nursery at their center, and they're growing the plants, and then they're bringing them out and they're planting them in the, you know, a restoration enhancement thing that we're doing, and all that kind of. But it always comes down to, like, who's got money for buses, you know?
Yeah.
So, you know, we do fundraising to try to support, but you'd be surprised at how much it goes to, you know, something as simple as transportation.
I got to take a leak real quick. Can I just run off to the bathroom?
Yeah, we can
Come
actually
back. I drank like 30 ounces of green tea before I.
Yeah.
Okay, I mean, I'm down to go for another 10, 15 minutes. I just really got to.
Oh, sure. Yeah, you go take care of that. We'll cover you.
All right. Okay. So the green tea.
Dane,
Nice.
How's your bladder doing?
I'm good. I'm drinking a lot of water, but I'm good.
Yeah. The out of doors up by you, it's so California's geography, geology, you know, biosphere, it's so diverse. You have a totally different experience than Dave and I have down here in Orange County.
Yeah, we got the redwood forests up here. I mean, you can go from the ocean. I could walk from the ocean beach to the redwood forests in about 10 minutes. So it's
Wow.
We got a lot of different ecosystems here. It's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, you guys are up in the temperate rainforest areas,
Right.
which is cool. We're semi-arid deserts down here.
Yeah, a little warmer down there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
a little less water.
No,
You know, our average rainfall is like 12 inches.
right.
But LA County has a peak that's above 10,000 feet and a beach, and they aren't that far apart either. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Like when you think about governing a space like that, forget the plants for a second. All of the things you have to cover from that altitude all the way power out into the ocean, you have to fuck with things. You know, it's a lot of shit to figure out. And I know, Dave, for you, you guys have to always deal with the government, plural, and the different entities. Is that the bulk of your work? Was like just dealing with managing relationships?
For us, yeah. We're not your typical nonprofit that raises, you know, does fundraising all the time. Most of our work is actually coming through service agreements with governmental agencies, and it's everything from cities to the counties to the state to the feds. So we deal with the gamuts of all that. I think the biggest challenging thing we've had is, you know, you're working for these cities, and all of a sudden there's an election and a whole new group of city council. Then all of a sudden you got to re-educate everybody, and you're getting these decision makers coming in who don't know, you know, anything, and then, you know, they get upset and they'll like clean house on the executive level of like the city manager's office, and then all of a sudden you get a whole new group coming in from there. And I think one of our biggest challenges of working for so many governmental agencies is the turnover in leadership within those, and a turnover of elected officials. And we work really hard at, you know, we do these driving tours where we'll take elected people out, and they're magical tours. Once they get in that truck and we take them out in the middle of nowhere and start telling them what's happening, they get it because they're experiencing it. But, you know, they're there for 4 years and then they roll off to something else, or they go up to the state level, and then you get new elected officials coming in, and you got to start all over again. So You know, like I'll give you an example. We've been working with one of the cities here for almost 20 years, and we've had 10 contract managers in those 20 years.
Yeah.
So the person managing our contract, every 2 years, somebody new is coming in.
Yeah,
And they don't know what to do.
we need politics to be done by AI, you know, like an
Right?
uncorruptible AI. Just fucking, you know, and with like a bullshit, like a built-in bullshit meter where it just, I'm sorry, I think you're lying. Or like, I'm sorry, I think as a candidate, you're susceptible to, you know, corporate influence or something like that, you know, just
Yeah.
like that's definitely a job that should be contracted out to AI. I don't know why anybody would want to go into politics, man. It seems fucking horrible. And even city government, any of it, you know?
Yeah, it all has its own stuff. So, you know, it's not,
Yeah.
I deal with it a lot, and I can be good at it when I want to be, but it's not my favorite thing to do.
It's just so fake. You know, I think that's the reason Trump appealed to people, regardless of anybody's opinions on Trump. And I certainly don't like the fucking guy, but I think it's part of the reason he appealed to people is because he wasn't reading off a script. He didn't come off like a fucking phony. And I think, you know, if you're not looking at the guy's ideas, people like, you know, that people like that. And so much of American politics is just so phony. Like, I'm middle class. I'm, you know, that just fake fucking salesman. It's revolting. It's like they're talking to you like someone at the cell phone company. You know, I'm so sorry, sir. And who do I have the pleasure of speaking with today? It's get the fuck out. Don't talk to me like that. Just be real. I'd rather tell you to go fuck myself than you know. I can already tell you're lying to me.
Yeah. People are the problem with the equation, just so you know.
Right. That's why you need AI. You need, like, I saw last night. I saw there was a fucking AI granny that some company invented, an AI like geriatric woman to respond to scammer calls from India. And it was fucking hilarious. I mean, they were recordings of these scammers just getting really mad and like berating this woman who doesn't exist at all. She's completely AI.
Good.
You know,
That's awesome.
she's just wasting all their time. Like, that's brilliant. That's a great use for artificial intelligence.
As long as there's been an internet, there's been not blonde-haired chicks with giant boobs who love you on there, convincing you that they're there. You know, like it's the modern version of it, right? Like, no, she really likes me. She really exists. I swear to God. Yeah. I wanted to ask. Yeah, I wanted to ask you and Dave about, like, how does one just get simply started? Like, Dave's great because he's like, hey, plant this kind of milkweed. Now we got a little monarch colony that comes. It's amazing. They just know how to show up, and more of them come in. I've been forever talking about trying to get bats to pollinate our dragon fruit. You know, and we've got to build a bat box. And I'm like, how do I buy bats? But apparently, bats just show up. They're like, oh, you got a bat house?
Yeah.
How do you get someone just to nudge off of 0 and just go to 0.1 on the start, like just to move in any direction at all in a positive way?
I mean, tell them to just start taking pictures of what they see and what they like. But they have to have access to land. They have to have access to places they could see this stuff. One of the big problems where I'm at in Texas is there's no access. It's all roadside. There's no, unless you know someone that's a property owner. I mean, yeah, people always say this, that we've got a couple of state parks. Yeah, a couple. I mean, it's crumbs. It's barely that. And it costs money. And a lot of people don't want to spend the money to go there or whatever, or that's far away. It's nothing compared to having good public land, having BLM land or national forest or anything. So if they can't see it, then, they're not going to give a shit. But I think once people, look, we evolve with this stuff. We've got millions of years of evolution with this stuff. It's only recently that we've been so separated from it and able to forget that it exists. It's relatively recent in our history. Last few hundred, maybe 1,000 years, agriculture was helpful in helping us forget it existed. Technology more so. Obviously, we want to keep agriculture and technology, keep those things, but also don't forget that there's this living world that's out there. Oh, and by the way, it supports us, and without it, we'd all die. That's a big part too. But I think definitely having access to it and then just taking pictures of stuff. These things, You could I could literally, if I didn't know anything, take a picture of a plant on the hill behind my house, native plant, and put it up on iNaturalist, and it'll give me suggestions. And there's like an 80% chance that it'll be right and tell me what it is based on artificial intelligence, looking at other photos and comparing with what's been viewed nearby. iNaturalist is a great app, just obscure everything so no one else can see it unless you want people to see where you've been. And then you've got a record of everything that you've seen too on your iNaturalist account. I use my iNaturalist all the time. What was that plant I saw in Chile, 2019? It was a Euphorbiaceae. I can't remember the fucking name of it. It bled white sap profusely. When I touched it, it was growing with a whole bunch of other cool giant cacti. Oh, and look it up. Family Euphorbiaceae, Chile. It'll give me a list of everything in that family that I saw in Chile. Boom. It's Euphorbia lactiflua. Cool. I forgot what that name was. Big help. It's like my own logbook. I collect herbarium specimens to a session in an herbarium, a catalog of dried pressed plant material. I use iNaturalist observations. I use everything, the whole record I kept of iNaturalist. It's one of the most wonderful things about the internet and smartphones to me. It really is. I've learned so much, and I can keep track of everything.
I think that the technology has an opportunity, because Pete, you asked if what does it take. It's the little things, but it's the things that you connect with, right? You could be in your backyard and see something and like, what is that? Like, ask the question and try to figure it out. And then pretty soon you're into like, okay, I know what this tree is, and I think it's super cool. And oh wait, there was this bird and it was yellow, and you learn there's a warbler, oh, that's cool. Like, what's that? And that's how it starts, and it can be in your neighborhood, as long as you got some nature. And even if you don't, it can start something else that leads into nature. But it's really, I think, about access and experience, getting that experience. And now that the resources are, you used to have to buy a stinking field guide for an area that you're going to and hope you can, figure out from a couple of pictures what's what. With the AI stuff, it's dynamite. You're like, yeah. And, you can get a kid hooked on that easy. Be like, let's go for a quick hike over in the marsh and hit this, and tell me what it is, kind of stuff. And it's those simple little things that establish that connection to the natural world. And, we're not that far, evolutionary wise, we're not that far removed from it. And we should be able to come back relatively easily.
And raptors are cool. It's always great to go on a nature walk with you, Dave. You're so great with that. And then
that's how I started. There was the guy that was doing falconry in the schoolyard down the street from my house when I was a kid, and I'm like, that's badass. Like, I'm into that.
Yeah. Dave knows some amazing people. Hey, I want to wrap this up so you guys don't got to listen to me yapping all day long. But everybody should go look. If you guys are already doing this, so many people already are. And congratulations, by the way, Joey. You're so successful with your channel. But just if you guys can figure this out, this is really interesting. It's great stuff, and it's crime pays, but Botany doesn't. That's where you go. There's links. You can find it. Type in Joey's name. It's not that hard to find him, but you're absolutely going to love his work. It's fantastic. And I appreciate you for coming on the show. What do you want to say to all of us to wrap things up?
Me? What do I want to say?
Yeah.
I don't know. Get the fuck out there and just start looking at stuff. I start asking questions. The key to learning is always asking questions. And you've got these smartphones and computers. You can literally ask your phone a question and it will fucking answer you. I mean, it's right there. Do you want to use it to like look at pictures of butts and pictures of what people ate for lunch, or do you want to? You could use it for both. You could use it to teach yourself too. Right. I mean, really, that's what, get out there. Just be curious, just ask questions and understand the concept of native and invasive. And it's not about some sort of purity test. It's about ecological function and pragmatism in this living machine. And it's really cool. Again, we got 2 million years as a species evolving with this thing. It's in our genome to care about it already.
Cool. Dane, what do you want to say before you wrap it up?
Oh man, I don't know where to go. You guys are so smart. I'm just sitting here like lost, but Yeah, I totally agree. I think it's important we all get back out there and into nature because, you know, it is really interesting and there's so much to learn and we got to get away from. I agree phones are important, but we got to peel ourselves away from these things sometimes and go look at a tree and go look at nature because it is very healing and very, very, very important that we keep it prevalent and take care of it.
Dave, bring us home.
You know, if you have any type of the small little amount of love for nature, Google in your phone, where can I get involved? Like, where's an organization I can join to learn more about this and all that. And if you're a parent, you know, take your kids to a natural area and go check it out, you know. And if you feel lost, find someone that has docent-led hikes, you know, that can teach you. You got a leader that's there their whole job is to engage with you and try to let you know what's going on in the natural world around them. So the resources are there, especially with all the technology now. And I think it can be easier than it's been ever if people just do it. And so I agree. Go outside.
I like it. All right, let me roll the credits. I'll come back and say goodbye to you guys in a sec. Thanks, everybody else. All right, here we go. Hey, thanks for watching the show. I really appreciate it. Right here, you can subscribe. Please do that. It makes the show grow. Hit that notification bell so you know which incredible guest is coming up next. Down below is the PayPal link. You can put a small subscription in. That is an enormous help. All that money goes right back into the show. And then right up over here are the next episodes you should listen to, curated by yours truly. Thank you so much.